Welcome, everyone, to Explore 2020 Day 2. For those of you who didn't attend yesterday, my name is Ashley Sullivan from Cisco Investments, and I'll be your MC for the day. We've got another exciting agenda lined up for you, bringing together leadership from Cisco's investment and acquisition team alongside founders and visionaries from the startup ecosystem. As a quick reminder, I know I mentioned this multiple times yesterday, but if you have any thoughts or comments or questions, make sure to drop those into the chat window. Our team does read them and we'll answer those questions as soon as possible. And with that, I'd like to actually introduce our first keynote of day 2 and the fearless leader of Cisco Investments in corporate development, Derek Idemoto. Derek is a lifelong venture capitalist. For the past 12 years, he's been here at Cisco, where he's spearheaded more than 30 deals totaling over $15 billion, including Duo, OpenDNS, and SourceFire. In his role, he shapes and influences Cisco's technology strategy and our approach to harnessing external innovation from the startup ecosystem. He's also a huge sports geek who loves analyzing player stats. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Derek.
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to Explore 2020. For those of you who joined us yesterday, welcome back. Some of what you'll hear I touched on yesterday, but I'll also talk about some trends that directly apply to today's themes, apps and data. My name is Derek Idemoto, and I'm honored to be leading Cisco's corporate development and investments team. Before we get started, I want to address what is going on in the US and around the world. We intentionally made the decision to move Explore 2020 because we didn't believe the time was right to host an event in the middle of this current environment. And we wanted to give our employees, customers, and partners the space to have candid conversations and take action against racial inequality. Cisco has always aspired to foster an environment of dignity, respect, fairness, and equality for all, not just for our company, but for the world. So to that end, I want to reiterate our commitment to power an inclusive future for all. Cisco recently donated $5 million to charities dedicated to fighting racism and discrimination. But there's so much more that we can do. And I invite you to join us in solidarity, understanding, and action to support African Americans and all people of color. Our hope is that together we can make progress towards a better, more inclusive world. Now, I've been a corporate acquirer and investor for over 2 decades. And during that time, I've learned one undeniable truth, that the startup ecosystem is the best landscape to see what's coming next. As strategy and technology leaders, so many of us are constantly challenged to figure out how to prepare for what could be on the horizon. Questions like, what's the next disruption? What's the next trend going to look like? What new markets may be emerging? And most importantly, how to get ahead of it all so that we can capitalize on it. I believe the startup ecosystem is the new frontier to discover technology innovation. And so this Explore 2020 event, brought to you by Cisco Investments, is for you, our customers, as an opportunity to find ways to learn from and partner with startups to meet your business needs. Today, you'll derive actionable insights that'll help you better prepare for what's coming down the line. So why are we doing this? Because when you win, we all win. And these days, for sure, in these challenging times, it comes down to helping each other. As you listen to today, through the course of our speakers, I invite you to do a couple of things. First, find the connections that are unique to your business needs. There's a ton of content we're going to cover, but that's really only the tip of the iceberg as far as what our portfolio companies can offer. And I'm hoping that for each of you, there'll be a theme or a trend that really catches your attention and helps you think about what's possible for your business and how we can partner with you even further. And second, think about how we as Cisco Investments might bring even more insights to you, whether it's security or collaboration or multi-cloud networking. We've got a wide-ranging portfolio of companies. We've got the acumen, and we've got the expertise to offer a rich view of the industry at large. Cisco has been an active corporate investor for the last 25 plus years. We've invested in hundreds of startups, hundreds more than we've acquired companies. And of those startups, we've acquired many of them to help them scale inside of Cisco at the right time. We're a company that values and embraces technology outside of our walls. There's no not invented here mentality at Cisco for sure, and our track record is a testament to that core value. And that's just simply not going to change. Even in these uncertain times, it's the consistency that keeps us ahead. We've got a consistent approach to invest in the market and continue to nurture innovation, even during the ups and the downs. And we have consistent standards that we put into place for any acquisition or investment. First, the potential for market and technology disruption. Surely, number two, the talent of the team. And third, and perhaps most importantly, certainly these days, the compatibility of the culture. These principles have been in place since Cisco's first investments and acquisitions in the early 1990s, and they are here to stay. We really appreciate all of you taking valuable time to be with us today, especially with all of the challenges that are unique to each one of us in our personal lives. At the very margin for many of us, the margin, we miss simple things like outdoor hobbies or personal passions, and certainly live entertainment. And speaking of live entertainment, I'm actually a huge sports fan, I always have been. I greatly miss watch live sports in person due to the pandemic and COVID-19. I miss sports so much that a couple of weeks ago, I found myself tuned into ESPN at 1 a.m. Pacific time here in the Bay Area, watching a professional baseball game being broadcast live from Korea. The announcers and color commentators, they were probably broadcasting live from their homes, I think most likely in New York, in an English language simulcast. The stadium, of course, when the camera panned to it, was completely empty. The umpires had medical masks on, and instead of human fans in the stands, there were actually cardboard cutouts of fans in various cheering positions behind home plate between the two dugouts. Crazy. Fake noise, simulated cheering were pumped into the stadium through the loudspeakers. There were cheerleaders, for sure. They stood on top of each dugout with their backs facing the field, cheering into completely empty stands. And yet I was still riveted to the TV. It helped me realize that night that no matter if there were fans or no fans, spectators or no spectators, it was time for all of us to take the field again, as hard as that may be. At Cisco, we're learning new ways to play this game, to play our game, and we will continue to deepen our engagement within the startup ecosystem, champion our portfolio companies, bolster our technology portfolio to the benefit of our customers. We will consistently apply only the highest standard to every acquisition and investment that we do. We invest in cutting-edge technology companies to gain insight into new markets, but also to offer customers visibility into best-in-class innovations, go-to-market opportunities. Our portfolio is pretty large. We've got 120 companies currently in our portfolio, and we've invested on average $200, $300 million a year the last several years. We also make investments as a limited partner into venture capital funds around the world. These really help us gain valuable insights into the innovation that is happening regionally. Places like Israel, India, Latin America, Canada, the UK, Australia, and China. And what differentiates our team is that we blend this and view as a corporate investor with our M&A expertise. It's all one team. And we further blend that view with how a close partnership with Cisco's sales and engineering can benefit our views, really leveraging the full force of Cisco as a company. Our team of domain experts, they review 1,000 companies each year. No kidding, which keeps us very, very close to the market. We then use these insights to be strategic in our acquisitions. Our portfolio of startups that cover a spectrum of technological areas: networking, data center, IoT, cybersecurity, data analytics, collaboration, 5G, silicon, optics, the list goes on. These companies are based globally, every corner of the world, where we also have many of our team members, which fuels growth both for the region and also for the world at large. I always like to say that the sun truly never sets on Cisco investments. We understand that our customers now are navigating change at a pace that is truly without precedent. IT is at the very center of every company, but it's really evolved from helping the company run better to helping it ultimately run faster. When we say that we'll reimagine applications, it's because we know that apps are the business. Customers, they need to be able to deploy quickly, fast, deploy them everywhere. And for these applications, you've got to be able to observe every experience and act truly in real time. The data that comes from those apps, those experiences, needs to be secure. And security is truly foundational in today's digital world. Every perimeter, every surface must be protected. And what is the perimeter these days when the lines are blurred between home and work? Infrastructure becoming more software defined, intent driven, powered by context. And finally, the heart of this all is our people. That's really the competitive advantage for each one of us. Empowering your teams is about providing the ability to collaborate seamlessly across every medium. I highlight this because it's important to show where Cisco chooses to invest. We invest in those pivotal domains that really align to our core and are most impactful and relevant to you, our customers. But we also target adjacent markets that are poised to shape the future. These are horizon type investments. So taking a look that is 1 or 2 degrees removed from where we are currently, it really enables us to see better where the world is really headed. And that takes me into some of the trends we are observing. So today, we were talking about applications and data trends. With the rise of data, developers are fundamentally challenged to create apps that scale beyond the data center with insights that go well into the cloud. This is really, there's some interesting shifts going on, leading to a couple of key trends that really stand out: shift left and broad-based observability. Regarding shift left, customers are now looking upstream in the software development cycle to make decisions about how they want to operate software. This is because the traditional model for software development has really completely changed. In the current environment, software development happens in chunks, which creates more opportunities for breakage, from security to operations. Now, companies, we're asking developers to be more thoughtful about implementing pieces of software early in the process. For example, they want software that's much safer, even if it's being updated quickly at the same time. So doing this, you've got to begin at the source, shifting left, right, where the code is actually being made. This puts even greater responsibility in the hands of developers. They are now making operational and security decisions, as well as coding. The result of this shift left is really twofold. There's a rise in developer power. Developers are having an increase in influence on purchasing decisions. And there's now a greater intersection between DevOps, IT ops, and security ops. And that also leads to the second trend that I mentioned: broad-based observability. So a key challenge really in the development of apps is observability. Without a holistic view, it's easier for gaps and silos to readily occur. And given cloud native software and the layer of abstraction, modern IT stacks, they need to look at the whole picture instead of one piece of the puzzle. And to better address this trend for Cisco, the right approach is to offer a full stack of solutions to help you, the customer, think about the health of an application from the beginning of the development process all the way to the end. A related example of this is our recent announced acquisition of Thousand Eyes. Really excited about that, which provides visibility across networks and applications across multi-cloud environments. This also builds on top of our acquisition a few years ago of App Dynamics, which addresses the performance of an application. So from an investment perspective, this is a space that our portfolio companies, some of them are squarely looking at. And you'll hear from some of them: Rookout, Sea Lights, Secure Code Warrior, in the upcoming panel discussions. Again, I believe the best insight into the frontier of startup technology innovation does come from this ecosystem. Cisco's focus on investing in markets aligned to our core strategy and adjacent markets that are also shaping our future. Our investments provide a lens into external innovation that's happening across the industry. These early insights enable us to see and take action ahead of disruptions and trends. In fact, it's our consistency as a corporate investor that's really helped us adapt and get ahead of changing market dynamics. But we don't want to keep this to ourselves. We want to continually share the learnings we get from our portfolio companies with you, our customers. So, my ask in action for you today: think about how Cisco Investments, think about how our team can bring more intelligence to you. Please connect with us directly or reach out to your Cisco account managers to set up time. Our portfolio companies would love to meet you. The benefits are abundantly clear: an external lens to innovation, early knowledge of trends, access to the best portfolio companies. So on behalf of the entire Cisco Investments team, thank you for spending time with us today. It's our commitment to open the door to the startup ecosystem so you can explore the new frontier. Have a great and safe day, and thank you once again.
Thank you, Derek, for that great overview of Cisco Investments and for teeing up some of the topics that we'll talk about today around apps and data. So now I'd like to transition us over to our first panel. But before I do, just a quick reminder: if you have any thoughts or comments or questions, drop them into the chat window. The team and myself are standing by. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. So our first panel of day 2 is a new era of DevOps, apps without blind spots. And that's led by none other than Noah Yago. Noah leads Cisco's investment and acquisition activity in the areas of big data and analytics and cloud. He has over 2 decades of experience building companies as a venture capitalist, entrepreneur, and board member, leading investments in DataRobot, Dremio, Mesosphere, CyberArk, Click Technologies, and many more. He joined Cisco in 2017 from Triangle Peak Partners, and his current investment focus areas are IT ops, developer-facing technologies, AI, ML, and data platforms. So when I asked Noah about a fun fact that I could use while I introduced him, he said that actually his first experience as an interviewer was back in the mid-90s when he interviewed Dr. Ruth for a now defunct teen-oriented PBS television show. Take it away, Noah.
Thank you, Ashley. Well, everyone, welcome to what promises to be one of the most exciting panels for Explore 2020, the new era of DevOps, apps without blind spots. My name is Noah Yago. I work at Cisco Investments, and I head up data analytics and cloud. And a big part of our job is really to think about the IT operations space holistically. And one of the areas that's probably really central to a few key trends in the market that are driving a lot of innovation right now is DevOps. Square in the middle of the transition between on-prem to cloud migration and the disintermediation of IT operations. And we're hearing a lot of buzzwords in the space right now, things like shift left, a whole lot of other dynamics that are going on that are really just changing the way that different companies and buyers and consumers work in the marketplace. So today, I've got 3 CTOs and co-founders of 3 of the most exciting companies in the space who are going to join me to have a discussion really about what do all these changes in the marketplace mean, and what are the blind spots today in the application development world. And I'll hand it over to my guests here to allow them to introduce themselves. Let's start with Liran.
Hey guys, so my name is Liran Chemovich. I'm Rookout's co-founder and CTO. Have a long career in software development and cybersecurity. And for the last 3.5 years, I've been founding Rookout, where we enable data collection from live application without having to write more code, redeploy or restart. You can just instantly collect data using non-breaking breakpoints.
All right, thanks, Liran. And then next, let's go to Matthias.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm Matthias Madou. My background, started my career at Ghent University out of Belgium, where I looked into static analysis. And with that knowledge, I actually moved to the US and joined a company called Fortify, which was working on static analysis and finding problems in code. And I thought it was all too easy to find problems in code. So we started Secure Code Warrior, where the idea is really to make sure that we create secure code from the start. And at Secure Code Warrior, as you said, I'm the CTO and co-founder.
All right, and Alon?
Hello, everybody. My name is Alon Eisenman. I'm CTO and co-founder of Sealights. My background is enterprise software. Several other startups all got acquired. First one was acquired by Mercury Interactive. I spent some time building up monitoring solutions and some testing solutions, testing automation. Started another startup company called Nolio that was acquired by CA, where we developed release automation. And that's actually what led us to gain, the experience and how the CI/CD market evolves, and the new bottlenecks led us to start Sealights.
All right. Well, thanks. Well, each of you, at some point in your career, you founded these companies and you saw a pain point in the market that was probably really related to a blind spot, the topic of this panel again. And I'd love to just hear from each of you, what actually led you to the point where you wanted to start a company to solve this opportunity that presumably customers were asking for or the market was asking for? Alon, why don't we start with you? You actually have a very long history in the testing market, as you mentioned, going back to the Mercury Interactive days, where you've seen the evolution of the space in the marketplace. So you obviously got to this point where you saw a real need for something like this. So I'd love to hear more about what brought you to that point.
Yeah, and the all testing market is always evolving. If we take 15 years back, it was mainly, large, huge, I would say, enterprise QA unit sitting and approving everything. Basically, they get a huge release and they release it over the years. It was evolved in a way that companies wanted to increase velocity, and they started building lots of automation. And that's actually led us to starting Nolio, where we built, a CI/CD or mainly continuous delivery platform, where we were actually pioneered in this market, where they used our solution to build up an end-to-end automation for the entire pipeline. And then when we saw, companies, really large companies, going into this, CI/CD and automation, then actually it started repeating. Every customer increased their speed, and they started getting lots of other issues. It almost became a chaos. They couldn't control what goes in, how to approve a build that is being deployed. They splitted the teams into services or microservices, and faced new challenges. So we actually ended up thinking there is a need for another initiative here, where actually led us to start C-Lights to hit there, exactly where they need to take a better decision when something is getting promoted inside the CI/CD. That's how it actually led us from one company to the other.
So you're looking at the software and the breakpoints after the software has actually been produced. Where Laurent, with Rookout, you're taking a different approach. You chose to enter the process earlier in the phase when the developers are working on the project and they're in the debugging phase. So how did you get to that point?
So it's a bit more, I would say, complex than that. At Rookout, when we just started, my co-founder and I, we found it very odd that for any change in the system, you actually have to go through this entire CI/CD pipeline. Almost anything requires writing code, rebuilding it, redeploying it. And we kind of thought it from a cybersecurity mindset, and we figured there are many changes we could probably do away without rebuilding, redeploying. We can just bypass the CI/CD pipeline, go directly to the source and get you the data you need, or update the application and so on. That's kind of what drove us to see that even with CI/CD, still updating application takes a long while. And doing that just to get a small piece of data is just such a big waste of time and effort. And using Rookout and similar tools, you can just go in, say, I want a piece of data from that piece of code. I want a variable, I want a log line, and instantly get it without going through this more traditional approach of create a new version just for that.
Interesting. So really what you're saying is it's not really a question of where in the software development lifecycle that you start, but it's more of a question about blurring the lines of traditional processes and then inserting the analysis and the breakpoints in a point that makes sense in a modern environment. Is that fair?
Exactly. We're seeing Rookout being used in greenfield when building new projects, when maintaining existing projects, when going through integration cycles or user acceptance cycles, wherever it is you're going through and you need a new piece of data for an engineering effort or even for a business effort, Rookout allows you to skip the line and instantly get the data.
Well, I'll note that you mentioned security as an area of interest when you actually considered starting the company. And Matthias, you built a business completely around this philosophy, this changing philosophy that developers are increasingly responsible for security. So what's interesting is among this group, you have three different views and three different angles, all really focused on a similar problem, but maybe at different pieces of the stack. So we'd love to hear from you, your view of the blind spot and really what brought you to the point where you decided to found your company.
Absolutely. And I would like to take us like 20 years back. And I think 20 years back, you actually had to show and prove that security was a thing, because 20 years ago, if it was functionally correct, if it was working, it was just fine. So we had to actually exploit code, and we had to really prove that code was broken. And once we were able to do that, there were companies coming to light that were finding more of these problems, like static analysis solutions, pen testing solutions. They were showing like, hey, there's more of these problems in the code. And there was this whole area of companies finding problems in code and finding more problems in code and finding them faster. And I think 5 to 10 years ago, there was another shift more towards like, hey, well, now we found them. That doesn't mean they are fixed, we have to switch from very reactive to more proactive. And the blind spot over here is throughout these 20 years was actually the developer. We didn't teach the developer. We didn't show the developer how to write secure code from the start. So we thought about like, hey, how can we make something interesting for a developer that teaches him how to write secure code from the start, which means it has to be fun and engaging. It has to be in the language and the framework that he's using on a day-to-day basis. It has to be there when he needs it. So we thought about a solution, a training solution, which is just there for the developer and there for the developer to help with security, because all too often throughout history, security has been seen as a negative thing. So we've built a business around the positiveness of helping developers writing secure code from the start. And we do that through training. We also do that through tooling, which integrates with the pipeline and with all the tools that a developer is using on a day-to-day basis. So our vision is really, we want to be there for the developer. Yes, it's about security, but we want to be there for the developer.
It sounds like an interesting point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this seems like a pretty significant cultural difference where you're actually putting the responsibility for security into the hands of developers. How do they react to that when you first take that to them?
So I think ultimately security is still responsible for it, but I think security figured out, or application security figured out like, hey, gee, we can point out problems, but if we don't get the developers on our side, well, nothing is going to happen. We can block them, we can stop them, they will not like us. So we have to get the developers on our side. So I think in the last 5 to 10 years, these two groups of people are growing more and more towards each other. And I think the days that an application security person is no longer able to code are unfortunately over. So I think they're no longer the paper guys moving stacks of papers with problems around. No, they have to sit down with the developer, help the developer, teach the developer how to do it in a correct way. So I think that's what changed.
Okay, and then I'll ask the same question that I asked Liran alone. Blind spot in a couple words, just to summarize.
Blind spot in a couple of words is 100% that we have to focus on the developer. There's not enough application security people. There's on average 1 per 100 developers. Think about 100 people. How do you guide 100 people in real time on a day-to-day basis in writing secure code? So the blind spot is really that we forgot that the bits and the bytes are written by the developer, and we have to help the developer.
Okay. So just on that point, go ahead, Alon.
Actually, I wanted to bring in something very similar to what Matthias was saying about, moving from a reactive, and it's really, really similar for us, moving from reactive to proactive mode. Same as we see now that, mainly companies, they large projects, they release code into production. Many times there are lots of, escaping defects, and the users, actually their users are discovering most of those defects. And what we enable is the same thing: become proactive and basically shift left and let them discover the potential defects in advance. And we're very similar on a different angle.
I agree, and I think it takes some time for companies to see that, that with being proactive, you can actually save a lot of money. The analogy that I always like to make is if you build a house and you do not think about an alarm system, you do not think about electricity, it's going to cost you more later on. So I think with security, it's the exact same thing. Think about it, be proactive, and unfortunately, it takes some time, but ultimately, it's going to happen.
Well, when you think about this whole process of who is responsible in today's market, and we've heard terms like DevOps, DevSecOps is a new term, which is really it's a portmanteau that no one likes, but everyone seems to use. Well, who should be responsible for it? Where does the buck stop? Is it at the CEO level? Is it the IT ops? Is it at the developer? Some combination of above, security teams? How would one think about that from a management perspective?
So I don't think security or quality could be expected to single-handedly own those aspects any more than you would blame a corporate lawyer, if one of the employees in the company murdered someone. I mean, the lawyers can provide some professional guidance, they can provide the tools, but they can't be there for everything all the time, and they can't force everybody to behave. And so in the same manner, security, ops, quality, each has its own responsibilities, and the rest of it is about motivating and guiding everybody else to align, to get everybody to understand what's best for the organization and get them working for it. And so that's DevOps, DevSecOps, whatever you call it. It's about empowering people and getting everybody to share in the responsibility. Well, the buck stops nowhere. Everybody is responsible. Everybody has to get it right.
Yeah, and if I can pick in on that one, I think that's absolutely true. I think the whole organization has to rally around that. And what we quite often see, if it's just a checkbox, if they're doing it for compliance, and that's the only reason they want to bake in security, for example, well, we actually prefer not to work with companies like that. We really hope that they can do it for compliance. Don't get me wrong. They can, of course, do it for compliance, but they have to believe in it. They have to say, yes, our organization is ready for this shift. We want to move towards this new way of working. Then we love to work with these organizations, because if everybody rallies around it, you can get something done in that organization, and it actually works.
Yeah. Actually, we see it on a different angle, not just for security, but for quality. And usually for us, you were asking about management. It's the VP of engineering. He is now responsible for the entire quality, both on the dev side, even on the on the production side. And they are they need to improve. They need to actually take better decisions based on data, not just on feeling, and improve their velocity, at the same time improve their quality. That's what we see, and it's full responsibility of engineering.
Well, so as you bring about all these organizational changes and different levels of responsibility, it also calls into question another topic. So let's call you all next generation startups, and we believe that's 100% true because we've invested in all three of your companies. But how does that change your thoughts on go-to-market? So if you have these new personas who are now more active in the markets that you play in, how does that change how you sell, how you price, who you're selling to, all of those things?
So
anyone feel free to jump in.
I would say modern software engineering organizations, modern IT organizations aren't focusing as much on cost reduction and checkboxes as in the past. Matthias mentioned around compliance. Alon mentioned other topics. Companies are more concerned with the business results and the business value of their IT, of their software engineering. It's about when you throw around stuff like digital transformation, then you can't think anymore in terms of, is my Outlook up or am I getting service from my cloud provider? You have to think about the value you're generating for your business, for your users. And so you have to focus more on how do I generate more value? How do I meet my business KPIs? I want my software to be secure, because that way it's going to provide more value. Not so that I can check some box. I want my software to be high quality so that it can provide more value, not so that I can check some box. And so it's about empowering the developers and giving them the tools. And to be honest, developers are very expensive. And it almost doesn't matter how much how much you're going to pay for software and how much you're going to pay for the tooling, they are going to be so much more expensive, the developers themselves, that if you're not getting your money's worth for paying them, for getting the business KPIs you care about, it doesn't really matter how much you're paying for the software itself.
Well, also historically, you had very clear lines of distinction between the person who bought your software and the person who used your software. You used to have central IT, there was a procurement process, and then that would go into the hands of the people who actually use that. And that's changed. So I think that to some extent speaks to a few of the points that you make.
Yeah, actually, that's what we see. Usually on the VP level, sometimes CIO level, they are accountable for velocity and quality, and they would basically push the use of C-Lights to increase the velocity, or keep increasing the velocity without compromising on quality. At the same time, the developers and the QA engineers would be the actual guys that would benefit and would use our data. So they're actually relying on them. They, at the end, the developers and the QA engineers would be the end users, supporting the need coming from the VP of engineering and CIO.
I think for us it's a maybe a little bit different in the sense that our buyer is quite often still at the security side, and our user are the developers, and it is security that benefits from the developers using our solution. I think the core value, and going back to what Liran just said, I think the core value of what we provide is it is instantly noticeable that you will have less security incidents if you train your workforce. What we're actually doing is we go back to the core of the whole problem, if I can use that word, which is the developer is just writing stuff. And throughout the CI/CD, we're finding problems, but ultimately nobody is fixing them. And slowly but steadily, yes, we're putting these processes in place, these blockers in place to fix issues, but still it all goes back to the developer. So if you can help him, if you go to the root cause of who's writing code and you're helping that person, well, essentially you get some benefit, you get some ROI, because stuff goes faster in production. There's less blockers being thrown, and you help the business shipping software with confidence, reliably, and that's ultimately your goal. So we're in terms of sales, yes, it's still the security people, the AppSec people that buy our solution. Developers are using it, but also developers are benefiting. So we also, in our sales process, we bring these two groups of people together. They have to learn and work together with each other, developers and the security people.
Yeah, and there was one more thing I wanted to raise about large companies where they already shifted or transformed into CI/CD and automation. They ended up having just too many pipelines and too many standards, too many tools. They are now actually standardizing again and building up like unified pipelines. And with that, we see more center of excellence teams that are pushing C-Lights. Or they would be the guys that would bring it in and implement it, and then align it with the with the standard pipelines, and then enable it to all the teams that would benefit at the end.
So it sounds like the central functions like central IT are maybe playing a more evolved role, where they're acting as advocates for certain software, where the purchasing decisions, or at least the adoption decisions, might be coming further from the developer community or shift left. Although in Matthias's case, you've still got the CISO dynamic, and it's a tool where you're actually trying to change the philosophy and establish the first line of defense with the developers.
It's a balancing act. We're seeing some companies being more open to distributed team picking their own tech stack and picking their own tools, while other companies require a certain degree of approvals, or even just still go to centralized procurement. It's a range, and obviously it shifts as people change, as companies evolve. And it's never easy to say what's right, because on the one hand, you do get a lot of pipelines, and you do get a lot of messy IT, and with dozens of tools and each with its own end of life and upgrade cycles and whatnot, and security not to mention. On the other hand, if you get too blocky, everything has to meet the same pattern, then you're blocking innovation and you're preventing the next generation of tools from being adopted. So I think the corporate world is much more aware of this dilemma today than it was in the past, but nobody has the magic recipe for how to make it work.
If I look at the one financial that I have in mind right now, I think 15, 20 years ago, they really tried to standardize on one technology stack. And unfortunately, they couldn't keep that together. And everybody started using their own languages, their own frameworks, their own IDEs. And now they're trying to get that back into, let's use this particular language, this particular framework, this particular IDE, and it's actually not working. And I feel that is really the rise of the developer. They are more powerful in an organization. They have more to say because they know best what to use for what kind of solution. So we're not fighting that. So with Secure Code Warrior, we're not trying to fight and say, you know what, you have to standardize on one language, one framework. We do the opposite. We try to support as many languages and as many frameworks as possible and help the developers write secure code in as many stacks as possible, because we feel that in organizations, converging towards one language framework is not possible these days.
Yeah. Another thing, by the way, it's the ops guys, like App Dynamics customers that would today want to shift left and actually would start bridging in between the dev and the ops guys, and that's something that also raising today. I would say the need to take some data from production and let the QA guys, the dev guys, also use, for example, understand where they are lacking testing based on usage data from production, and also when you have an alert, how would you determine who is responsible, or at least change some code there, and by the way, it's not tested. Then bridging this gap is also the next big thing, I would say, in DevOps.
Alon, you bring up the feedback loops, but Alon, you bring up a great point just about the data and the quality of data that might be different in a production environment versus a testing environment. And Laurent, I know that you spent a lot of time in that space. You mentioned just at the beginning of this session that Rookout, sure, there's applications in production environments, but there are a number of other applications and ways that you can use it by trying to combine live data sets with production environments. We'd love to just hear more about that.
So ironically, even though on our laptops we have the least quality of data, our laptops as developers, our own laptops are the least predictive environments to work on. They don't have the same number of CPUs, they're not running the right operating system, and they definitely are not don't have the right data. And still, as developers, we spend the majority of our time working on our laptops. Now, obviously, if you're just writing code, it doesn't really matter. But once you move into integrating, executing, debugging, then you are essentially working in an environment that's very far away from what you're trying to actually achieve. And there's been a lot of work around that space about standardizing environments, trying to get dev and staging closer to production, and everybody's working on it. It's a never-ending cycle. And still, there is still going to be a difference. And even worse, when you put production data into play, then you got a whole set of compliance and security risks and controls, and it's becoming even messier. And so what Rookout is trying to do is to empower developers to work in the environment that best fits whatever they're trying to achieve, rather than the environment where they have the best tooling yet. Kind of like Matthias said, where they're trying to bring every developer in every language, in every framework, the necessary skills, the necessary knowledge to develop securely. We are trying to provide every developer with the tools to investigate his code, to understand his code, to work with his code in whatever environment that's currently relevant. You have a bug in production, work in production. You have an integration issue in a user acceptance environment, work in that environment. Don't spend your time and effort trying to simulate that environment, simulate the data in the wrong environment, just so that you could try and guess what's going on in the real world.
So one thing I would like to add with Liron, his point that he was making is, I think even after that, with the whole new shift towards DevOps, is I think sharing is super important too. So even if you do that, if you find some blind spot and you mitigate that, I think in the new world and the way people are working, it's no longer writing documents and sharing documents. I think there's new innovative ways. The what is it called, chat ops, the way we interact with developers, the way we interact with each other within organizations is changing too. So I definitely agree, and I think there's even an additional point of sharing information and sharing knowledge with each other, and I think that's going to go through a drastic change in the next 4 or 5 years on how we share information with each other. Everything is going to be digital. It's not going to be on paper. It's not going to be text. It's going to be in the language, in the framework, in the tools that we're using.
Actually, that's one of the key things with us, with Sealights, that having like an end-to-end view, and you were talking about different environments. I think it's the key to understand how you did across all the environments, not just one environment and then take a decision based on one environment, but you have to take like an end-to-end view of what you did, how you tested your code across the entire pipeline with all the different environments, and then take a decision.
Absolutely.
I think collaboration is becoming a key factor, a key selling point in any DevOps tools out there. It doesn't matter if you're commenting on code on PRs or sharing incident data through Web Dynamics or whatever it is you're doing. In every tool out there, you're expected to be able to collaborate, and you're expected to be able to export the data and the results you're getting into other collaboration tools out there. You take a Sealights report and put it in Jira, identify an incident in Secure Code Warrior, and make sure that you notify the right people and make sure it gets fixed, and maybe educate more people about it. Same goes with Lookout. Once you collect a piece of data from production, maybe you want to share it with a colleague to get his insight on what that data means, or tell him that data shows a bug he has in his code. Collaboration is becoming critical to how we work, and our tools are expected to support it at a ever higher level every year.
Absolutely. I think it's tearing down the barriers between all the groups, like DevOps. You put two things together, DevSecOps. What you're essentially trying to do is you try to tear down the barriers between these groups. And if groups collaborate, if they really collaborate, these are the groups that are going to be very effective, very efficient, and they're going to produce really qualitative code. If you can't tear down these barriers in an organization, unfortunately, it's not going to work for these groups.
Yeah, and I think Liran mentioned it earlier. Having one, let's say, a developer understanding what's going on in like in integration lab or in staging lab. How did we do there? With manual testing even. It's impossible. They are not connected. There is no way that let's say a developer or a QA engineer that used to automate his test would get some insights of what's going on in after the manual testers run their test in UAT environment. So it's impossible to make the bridge, and that's also a huge amount of data to analyze. It's impossible for a person to analyze so much data.
So that raises a really interesting point. How do we think about collaboration? Is it as simple as using a collaboration tool and creating a connector to something like WebEx Teams or Slack? Or do you really need to think about it from a deeper product perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that simple. But the thing is the content. I think the key is the content. Is what do you send there? You don't want to send just too much information. You have to be very clear. And in our case, for example, if a quality gate fails, and a group has to be notified about that, and take decision or good decisions upon that, they should only get that, and should not get all the data that led us to bring in a quality gate failure.
Yeah, I think I agree with that point. So first of all, yes, I think developers, my feeling is our developers are reading email once a week, and all the other things happened in Slack or all the collaboration tools that our developers are using on a day-to-day basis. So I 100% agree that there's a shift here, especially techies. Email is no longer a thing. But then in these tools, yes, exactly right, Elon. We have to give them the right information at the right time that is consumable for them and what they need, no more, no less. It's a very fine balance, but we have to give them that information, that little piece of information when they need it. And then, we have to, as a vendor, we have to remove ourselves again. We have to say, oh, here is a piece of information. Let's remove myself again from the discussion. You have what you need. Let's move on.
Yeah, people are very busy. They are very busy with the day-to-day tasks. They have to get actionable data. They have to be guided. Say something happened, do that. It's not as they have to go start investigating, and Liran can probably elaborate more on that, but start running through huge investigations and then come up to the conclusion themselves. I think it's highly important that we bring them the actionable insights to take better decisions.
I definitely agree. First and foremost, you have to get people the right level of data, the right data in their chat app of choice. That's the best. That's the start. That's the best thing you can do. I would say that after you do that, it's interesting to see how do they combine that data into a workflow. Maybe they want to be able to hack the message you send them. Maybe they want to delete it. Maybe they want to forward it to somebody else. And depending on the type of the system you have, then over time you'll probably find more complex workflows that you can better support, whether through the chat tools or other collaboration tools. And gradually you can build better and better workflows so that you're more integrated with your users into the day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and I would also add, into their existing tooling. For example, if they used to run through pull requests, they have to get the go no go decisions right in where they take decisions. Can I merge the code or not? When they click the button deploy into production, they have to get that there. It's not just getting it in a messenger or something or an email, but also in the actual tooling that they used to use and take decisions.
Absolutely. I think the tools that are going to make it in the next 5 to 10 years are the tools that let other people integrate with you and are really let you do extensions, for example, plugins into your solution, extensions, integrate with other solutions. If you're focusing on that, so first make sure you have some value, but then second, if you integrate with the other valuable tools, I think that's key to success.
Absolutely.
Well, in terms of thinking about that, collaboration is one element of it. And then the data that you have access to, there's probably a degree of richness that you have with different data sets that help you position your product in a more capable way. What is the most attractive set of data that you could have access to for each of your businesses that will enable your product ultimately? And some of you have integrations with App Dynamics, for example. And how do you think about companies like that versus other players in the ecosystem?
In my case, and I mentioned that earlier, I think the most exciting part is take like an incident happening in production, understand what the code that is involved there, and then point into the developer that made the commit, enabling the organization to go directly to that developer, asking him, and see some commits that he did, asking him to probably fix the issue, and then take it back as fast as possible. And with our test impact analytics, test only what's needed to be tested, and take it as fast as possible back to production. The whole cycle is becoming extremely fast and very efficient.
If I can pick in on that one, I think the identity of the developer is becoming very important. And for me, there's actually two ways I can think about that. So first of all, there's the developer as such. Really, the developer that is doing or taking training. And if you say, hey, you know what, go back and you've made a mistake, well, then you can also link that to, hey, has that developer taken training? What kind of training? Is he skilled in a particular area? Is he not skilled in a particular area? And you can, again, help that developer and say, well, you've made that mistake because there's a portion of training that you should have taken or is best to take for you. And the number two is very similar. If you integrate with App Dynamics, it's the same story. It goes back to the developer. It goes back to the identity of the developer and what is that developer capable of? What are his skills? What can he touch? What can he not touch? And based on his skill level, you can already anticipate what the outcome is going to be of an incident, for example.
So for Rookout, first of all, we integrate with AppDynamics and other monitoring tools. Obviously, you can send the data you collect through Rookout to anywhere you want instantly. But I would argue our most valuable data is no data. And that's part of our approach. We're about enabling data collection. We're about empowering developers. But the data itself, that's yours. We can process it for you if you want us to, but it doesn't matter for us. You can just hand it off to you and let you run with it at your own pace under your own terms.
Yeah, actually, we see that very often. The concern of letting a SaaS product to access the code or to upload anything of code or binaries to the cloud in order to make all these analytics. And actually we do the same. So we do not access the code, we do not upload any binary, any code to the cloud, and we actually worked really hard to achieve that with all dynamic instrumentation that we only do on the binaries itself.
All right, well, interesting. Let's do a quick lightning round because we're starting to get towards the end of our time here. And the question that I wanted to ask all three of you is 3 to 5 years from now, who's going to be the most significant company in the DevOps space? And you're not allowed to answer your own companies. Anyone else on this panel? And I'll leave it to you to take it from there. And then we'll make closing statements and we'll thank everyone for their time.
If I go first, I think it's going to be a company in the development space, much more than in the ops space. And I'm pretty confident not everybody will agree, but I'm still convinced that it all starts with the bits and bytes that need to be written. And if there's an organization that can play in that field, that can do really well helping developers with getting a qualitative product out there fast, reliable, then that solution is going to win. Which company, I don't know, to be honest. I really don't know, but it's going to be a developer company.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would say companies like GitHub would get probably control over the entire DevOps. I'm not sure about DevSecOps, but would spread across the entire pipeline and get probably control over there. But I do think that we would see more and more, of the ops guys shifting left. Mm-hmm. Companies like AppDynamics, Dynatrace, Splunk would try get hold of DevOps as well.
Liran?
I would say the most dominant company in DevOps for the next 3 years is probably going to be GitHub. Ever since they got bought, they've been doing crazy well with amazing features, and they're obviously very big. 5 years from now, I don't know, that's ages in DevOps. So who knows? But next 3 years, probably GitHub. That's my bet.
Okay. Well, this has been an incredibly fascinating discussion. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. Being in the seats that we sit at Cisco Investments and Cisco Corp Dev, we spend a lot of time thinking about the future state of the world, what the key drivers are in the markets that we cover. And one of the great privileges is to be able to work with our portfolio company founders and CTOs who are really just at the tip of the spear in terms of trying to figure out a lot of these problems. And I know that I'm personally very excited about the new era of DevOps, and you share that enthusiasm, and I hope everyone else has enjoyed this. And hopefully this has shed a little bit of light in terms of how, not just the blind spots, but how to solve them in the future and what the world might look like in this space over the next 3 to 5 years. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Noah, Matthias, Liran, and Alan for that great discussion. All right, everyone, so now we are going to shift gears. If you were on yesterday, you know that the next segment in our event is something really special. But if you weren't on yesterday, sit back and prepare to be amazed, because coming up is none other than Keelan Laser, who is one of the foremost magicians who specializes in magical illusions using technology. He's been awarded several titles, including champion at the British Magic Grand Prix. He was the subject of a BBC documentary, and he's also performed for several world leaders, including Prince Charles. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Keelan.
Hello, and welcome to my show. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to give you a fascinating insight into the virtual world of magic and mentalism. Now, I've put my best smelling aftershave on for you lovely people. Now, before I start, I wanted to show you a new cool feature I found during the lockdown period on Google, and it's helped me out during this period. Basically, if you go to Google and you type in, let's say, I don't know, like tennis ball, TENNISBA, there we go, tennis ball, and you go to the images and you choose an image that you like, for example, this one. What's quite nice these days is the fact that you can literally just reach in there, grab it straight out into reality. And again, it's made my lockdown period a lot less stressful. I mean, I've been able to get hand sanitizer, loo roll. You know, it's been a godsend. So it's worth sort of checking that out if you have some time. Now, I would like you all to clear your minds of all thoughts, okay? Because in keeping with the topic of apps without blind spots, I'm going to show you a spiral to distort your vision. So I'm going to show you this on the screen. This is going to go on the screen. So we're going to pop that onto the screen. I'm going to be in a box in the corner, and I want you to stare into the center of this spiral. Just keep staring right into the center of this spiral. Do not take your eyes off the center of the spiral. In a second, I'm going to ask you to look at the back of your hand in a second. When I say now, look at the back of your hand. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Look at the back of your hand. Does it feel like your skin is crawling, is moving? Put your hand up if you could get the sensation that your skin is moving. Did you get that? You got that, Chris and Jennifer? You all got it. Perfect. Okay. Well, it looked like Jennifer was the first to put her hand up, I think. So you're probably the most susceptible to this. So I'm going to try this experiment on you. I have written a prediction on this card, which I'm going to place into this glass. Can you see that there?
Yes.
You can? Good. Okay. Jennifer, I would like you to think of an animal. Do you have an animal in your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Good. I want you to change that animal now to another animal, because that was probably an obvious choice, one that everyone goes for. So now change it to something else. Do you have one?
Yes.
Good. What is that animal?
A giraffe.
A giraffe. Okay. And out of interest, can you name this giraffe? If you were to name this giraffe, what would it be called?
Freddie.
Freddie.
Yes.
Freddie, the giraffe. Do you know someone called Freddie?
No. I do not.
I'm just going to see if there was anyone you know with a long neck called. Okay. Out of interest, what was the first animal you thought of?
Koala.
Okay, not so much of an obvious choice then. A lot of people go for either a dog, cat, monkey, elephant are quite popular, but you chose a giraffe called Freddie. Okay, interesting. Giraffe called Freddie. Okay, do you remember this prediction? Did you feel that you were influenced by that spiral in any way?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so? Well, I think you were, because it was all about, actually, the spiral was a bit of misdirection for subliminal advertising. I was actually giving you messages, and as the fact that you saw your hand move quicker than anyone else, I thought you were going to be most susceptible to this, and I actually drew a giraffe. Okay, not too impressed. I did actually write giraffe. Freddie, the giraffe.
That's crazy.
Who believes in clairvoyance? Hands up if you believe in clairvoyance. Well, after that, I'm sure most of you do. Well, do you know, regarding clairvoyance and fortune tellers, there is one clairvoyant that has made more accurate predictions than anyone on this entire planet. Take a look at this.
Who is the world's greatest clairvoyant? Is it the Mayans, Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, or even Uri Geller? No, it's in fact Homer Simpson. The Simpsons is not only the longest running sitcom, it has predicted some major historical events and some very random things. For example, they predicted President Trump's election in 2000 and it came true in 2016. Most famously for me, they predicted the fact that Roy, from My Magic Idol Siegfried and Roy, getting mauled by one of his tigers. They predicted it would happen in 1993, and tragically it came true in 2003. They predicted that Disney would buy 20th Century Fox in 1998, and it came true in 2017. And lastly, of course, they predicted a global pandemic with killer bees in 1990, and well, we know the rest.
Please don't tell the supervisor I have the flu.
Hey, Dad, this came for you in the mail.
We need a cure! We need a cure! Spooky, isn't it? Well, there's actually so many more predictions than I could just fit into that video. The video was like 15 minutes long, and I took it down to a minute. There was so many, but I know that you're all into apps and data and app development, and I would assume that you would think, well, The Simpsons is the longest running family show in history with 635 episodes. So statistically speaking, they're bound to make some accurate predictions. However, what I'm about to show you is quite freaky, because I found an image on Google and it really shocked me to the core that I thought I've got to bring this into my show. So I brought it here today, and basically I'm going to do something quite rare in magic by showing you the prediction, showing you a future event before it's even happened, which is quite rare in magic. But for that, I need two of you to cover your eyes, and the other two to get your cameras out, your phones out if you've got one, and to take a photo of this prediction. So I'm going to ask Liz and Chris to cover your eyes, okay? And then I'm going to show everyone else the prediction. So get your phone or cameras out, or just remember what's on the screen. Okay, so cover your eyes, Liz and Chris, and Pradeep, Jennifer, and everyone else. You can take a photo of this prediction, or you can just memorize it. So I can see Jennifer taking a photo. So now Jennifer's taking a photo. It is locked. It dates down back in time, and it's now cannot be changed. It is on your phone, Jennifer. You agree? Cannot be changed. Correct, yeah. And if anyone at home is who's not online but kind of watching passively, feel free to take a photo as well. So it cannot be changed. You know that there is no cheating going on here. Okay, good. We're going to go back to me. We're going to go to this top camera here, because I've written on the back of these cards. I've got 52 cards, and with the Sharpie, I've written the numbers 1 to 52. Sorry, Chris and Liz, you can look now. You can come out of the darkness. Perfect, sorry. Should have said that earlier. I have a pack of cards, there's 52 cards, and I've written on the back of them 1 to 52 in no particular order. Now, I'm going to ask you, Chris, to say an odd number between 1 and 52.
13.
13, unlucky for some, okay. And Liz, I'd like you to choose an even number between 1 and 52.
28.
28. Okay, 28. And Chris, I would like you to choose a playing card of your choice. Any card. Now, just bear in mind, the most commonly cards selected are the Ace of Spades, the Queen of Hearts, and the Two of Hearts. So if you're thinking of one of those, you can have one of those, but just for everyone else who's watching, they are the most common cards. So your choice.
Let's go with 9 of diamonds.
The 9 of diamonds. Now, Liz, you have an opportunity to stick with Chris's card, or you can change to a completely different one. It is up to you. I know you like the number 9, don't you?
I do.
But do you want to stick with it, or do you want to choose a completely different card? It's up to you.
I'm going to stick with it.
Are you sure? It's up to you. It's up to you. Your choice.
Okay, I'm going to do the Jack of. I'm going to do the Jack of cloves or spades. Sorry, Jack of spades.
Jack of spades.
Yeah.
Okay. Jack of spades. I put JS. Okay, and get rid of the 9. Okay. Chris, are you happy with the 13?
Yeah.
Liz, the indecisive one. Are you happy with 28?
Yes.
We're happy with 13. We're happy with 28. And lastly, we're happy with the Jack of spades. 100% sure, your final answer? Okay. All right. I'm going to go through the pack. And if you see 13 or 28, just holler out so we can hear you, because just in case I miss it. So 13 and 28. Card 13 and 28 from 52 cards. Here goes.
No, 28. I saw 28.
Oh, there we go. 28 and 13. Getting close. Hope I've numbered all these correctly. There we go. 13. 13 and the Jack of Spades. The Jack of Spades. There we go. That was easy enough. Okay. 13, 28, and Jack of Spades. We're just going to put that prediction. This is what everyone saw when your eyes were closed. Now, Jennifer can verify she's taken a photo of it, and I'm sure lots of people at home have taken a photo of it. They saw, I found this on Google, the Simpsons character. And he had the 6 of Hearts, 2 of Clubs, and 27 on his in his hands. And I thought that was strange because I had a feeling today was going to occur. The fact that you chose 13 cards, you wouldn't change your mind. You couldn't change your mind because it is the 6 of Hearts, the one that is in the Simpsons picture just right up there. You had to choose 28. You had to choose it because he had the 2 of Clubs, and the 28th card is the 2 of Clubs. And of course, the Jack of Spades. That had to be the Jack of Spades. It couldn't have been the 9 of Diamonds because it is card 27. Simpsons really is the greatest clairvoyance of them all.
How?
Wow, freaky. Freaky. Now, how many of you have been watching Netflix more over this lockdown period than any other period in your entire life? Show of hands. Quite a few of us, yeah. Now, I have written down a list of 100 movies written from 1 to 99 on my phone. I've taken the list from IMDb, and they're the greatest movies of all time. You should have seen, I would say, the majority of them. There's a few oldies in there, but there's a few brand new ones, and there's pretty much all the classics. Jennifer, I'd like you to say a number between 1 and 99. Any number between 1 and 99. The one that comes into your mind now.
39.
39, did you say? 39. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go to this top camera. Can we go to this top camera? I'm going to, let me just move that so you can see it. I'm going to go to my notes. Hopefully you can see this. Let me just go to my notes. Can you see 100 greatest movies of all time? Let me just move that up. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you said 39. Let's go to 39. Scroll up. We have, can you see what 39 is?
Superman.
Superman. If you had chosen 40, you would have got Rocky. If you had chosen 38, you would have got Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark. But you chose Superman at 39. You can see that they are all different. We've got Jurassic Park at 60. We've got Nashville 81. We have The Great Dictator at 91. Psycho. That was a film about my ex-girlfriend. That was at 96. And Toy Story at 100. But you can see that they are all different. Now, I'm going to load up Netflix. Let me load up Netflix. Move that out of the way. You don't look at my history. Let me get rid of that. Moving swiftly on. Now, I'm going to make Superman appear in Netflix. Okay, here goes. 3, 2, 1. There's Superman. Okay, I don't seem massively impressed, I can tell you. Mine more impressed if I took it and I just sort of peeled it off there into reality. Now, obviously, I don't have a DVD player anymore to prove to you that is Superman. You have to trust me, that is Superman. Well, the way I know that is because it's got Superman written on the other side. It had to be Superman. It had to be Superman. And it had to be 39. We had no other choice. It had to be. Thank you very much. My name is Keelan Laser. Thank you for spending time with me. I hope to see you all in real life sometime soon. Aside from that, enjoy the rest of your day. Please follow me on social media. My name is Keelan Laser. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Okay, I thought yesterday's act was really amazing, but today's was even better. So now that we've had a chance to have that quick break, we're going to jump right back into it. The next panel is modernizing app delivery, apps without red lights, and that's going to be led by Nita Shetty. So Nita leads security and enterprise networking business development for Cisco Investments, where she acts as a partner and a champion for our portfolio companies, helping them accelerate their businesses. Over the past decade, Nita has held various business acceleration roles here at Cisco, spending the majority of her career in Asia Pacific. When I asked her about her hobbies, she said that she's really gotten into running recently, so I told her that we'll have to run a half marathon together. But she's also gotten really into binge watching Money Heist and Tiger King. She said she's a little late to the game there. So now I'm going to hand it over to Nita.
Thanks, Ashley. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining today's panel. My name is Nita Shetty, and I lead security portfolio development for Cisco Investments. And today, I have two great panelists to talk about modernizing application delivery. As we all know, application delivery has become extremely complex in the face of multi-cloud environment, especially in the last few years. Now, this brings a host of challenges. Organizations are looking for network agility and increased capacity without compromising on application performance, reliability, or even security. So to talk about this, we have two great leaders in the security and enterprise networking space. So let me introduce you to Jeff Reed. Jeff is the Senior Vice President of Product of Cisco's Security Business Group. He's been on this particular role for over 3 years, but prior to that, he's also been a Senior Vice President for Cisco's Enterprise Networking and Solutions Group, where he oversaw a business of $16 billion of networking product portfolio. He has a Bachelor's of Science degree in Industrial Engineering and an MBA, both from Stanford University. He lives in Burlingame, California with his wife and 2 teenage kids and enjoys basketball and traveling with his family, which he hopes to do sometime soon again. Welcome, Jeff, to the panel.
Thanks, Nita. Yeah, you forgot Trixie the dog, but otherwise that was very comprehensive.
Next, I have the CEO of NS1, Chris Beavers. Chris and his co-founder founded NS1 back in 2013. He's got his PhD in robotics from Rensselaer's Polytechnical Institute, where he now mentors a student. He lives in New York area with his wife and an extremely energetic toddler, which I can say is absolutely adorable as I get to see his pictures on Twitter. He once lived on a boat in Singapore and considered building a pizza business out there. Chris, welcome to the panel.
Great. Thank you, Nita. Appreciate you having me.
So, Chris, from a pizza business to founding NS1, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure, yeah. So NS1, we're a DNS and DDI company. So DNS, the domain name system, is this foundational protocol of the internet that turns domain names like Cisco.com into the IP addresses that your browser, your apps actually connect with behind the scenes. And then DDI is an extension beyond DNS into the protocols that give our devices like our phones IP addresses to connect to the network and help them discover applications. We play in that space, so think of this as foundational networking technology. We're about a 7-year-old business, and today there's 2 major lines of business at NS1. One is what we call managed DNS. We operate a big, huge global delivery network. Our software runs on that network, and many of the key domains and applications on the internet are powered by that network. Meaning, when you type in something like LinkedIn.com or Dropbox.com to your browser, our job is turn that domain name into the right IP address for you to connect with to interact with LinkedIn's or Dropbox's application. The other line of business for us, DDI, we ship the same technology that powers our cloud managed DNS services with some additional capabilities for our customers to run inside their networks and power those networks. So you can think of these as foundational technologies for modern cloud native elastic networks, powering most of the biggest enterprises and key applications in the world. And what our customers are doing with our technology first is focusing on unlocking leverage in these foundational protocols or networking technologies toward user experience, performance, availability of applications. A good example there is we recently steered all of the live streaming traffic for the Super Bowl. And there, our job was make sure nobody ever sees a buffering icon when they're opening up the stream by sending users to the right content delivery infrastructure to meet that requirement. Another big reason our customers tend to work with us is minimizing costs to deliver, improving efficiency. And here, this can mean everything from automating the DNS as part of the CI/CD process for developers, all the way through to preferring, say, in that Super Bowl example, the cheapest CDN that's going to make sure a user never sees a buffering icon. And another key reason our customers are working with us is because these are such foundational protocols and technologies for every application and every network, it's paramount that they be secure. If you want to take over an application, taking over its domain is one of the highest leverage ways to do that. So our customers trust us to secure these protocols, to keep them online in the face of big attacks that are happening all the time, all over the world. So hopefully that gives everybody a good sense of what NS1 really is.
And I think it's interesting, Chris, just, as we've gotten to know you, like the idea of like how you've built like basically cloud native technology and are now extending it into DDI and allowing customers to use it. I mean, it's like kind of a perfect, mix of bringing that capability and then allowing it to really scale and function and automate. And that's because that's a new, like that, you think about this space, it's not DDI hasn't been a sexy space for a while. You guys are bringing, but you're showing like how critical it can be to a well-performing environment.
Well, it's also a new dynamic simply because of the convergence of everything that powers our enterprises and our networks and behind the firewall, right? And what's happening on the internet, the cloud side, right? These technology areas are all aligning in ways they haven't before. And so these markets, historically, they've been totally separate markets, right? Yeah. You've had the DDI market, which is relegated to appliance vendors, boxes, right? Yeah. And then you have the managed DNS market, which is networking companies who all run the same software. And what's changed is everything on the internet now is complex and spans all of these things, hybrid cloud, basically, right? And it makes sense now for these markets to align and be powered by tech that is aligned, right? And converge.
So let's get into the panel. My first question is for Chris. Chris, as users, we've got accustomed to near instant responses from websites and web applications. This creates a whole lot of challenges to the IT team. Can you talk about some of those challenges?
Yeah, it's actually, I'm glad you raised the pizza point, because a lot of NS1's business is inspired by my time in Singapore. When I first got to Singapore, which was mid-late 2000s, right? Just a tiny chunk of the internet was fast, right? It was really tippy top of the internet companies who had invested in global footprint and presence and recognized how important that is. By the time I left, a lot more of the internet was fast, and that was because everything changed through the 2000s, right? Everybody realized that users outside of the East and West Coast of the United States matter, right? If they're trying to grow global businesses, which is the promise, right, of the internet. Well, you got to meet those audiences where they are, and users rightly everywhere in the world expect great experiences, right? And there's this little problem of physics that gets in the way of that. Right? You can't really beat the speed of light. So if you have a user in Singapore and they want to access a piece of content that sits in a data center in Ashburn, Virginia, well, that's a problem, right? Because there's no way around the 200 milliseconds in each direction for that traffic to flow. So what we saw happening in that time frame was everybody with global audiences investing in user experience and putting content and data and code closer to audiences. And all this was enabled by all the other changes that were happening through the mid and late 2000s, right? The emergence of public cloud and DevOps methodologies and content delivery networks, right? So we just saw all of this change in the way applications were being built and delivered in response to this demand and this expectation of audiences. And now you can't really put an application on the internet if you don't meet these sort of table stakes requirements for providing great user experiences to audiences all over the world.
Absolutely. And Chris, you spoke about some of the challenges from the network and the infrastructure perspective, but obviously there are challenges from the security standpoint. Jeff, what are your views on that?
Yeah, so kind of similarly, if you think about where we've been, the journey over the past like 10 to 15 years in terms of both where the application's built and delivered from, the move to the cloud, et cetera, as well as where the users are. So we've seen this kind of explosion of mobility and distributed workforce, et cetera. And so, kind of as that's happened, basically the structure of your network's changing, as Chris is very familiar with. And, part of that is how are we thinking security aspects? And what we're seeing is essentially where you place those security controls, and even in some cases, what type of controls you need are changing as we move to the cloud and kind of see this kind of scale out from the user side. So that's what we're seeing. And so I think one thing that's starting to happen is, do we start investing more and more in terms of like, where's kind of that service edge for delivery of things like security capabilities? And I know we're going to talk about DNS here in a little bit, and that's been a big one. So that's really, you can think about over time, how do I want to continue to kind of rethink that? And there's both the, how do I protect my users that are going outbound to applications? And then also as the application deliverer, like what are the types of security aspects I need to have, on the inbound side? And so those are all kind of changing in this mix right now. And frankly, I think we're pretty early on the security side. It's funny, I think, Chris, as part of what he's done, like, I feel like in a lot of ways, the delivery side is a little more mature. Mm-hmm. I think on the security side, it's a little bit less so, and you're going to see this opportunity for new capabilities and services to really come up particularly on the security, but actually on both. But we're seeing, I think, a lot of ways we need to catch up on the security side.
That's a great point that you're making, Jeff. So obviously, we're talking about these challenges. But to overcome some of these challenges, businesses need to change the way they are thinking about application, networking, or even security strategies. So can you talk about where are these businesses making investments today, and have those priorities shifted as part of The
short answer, James, yes. it's kind of amazing actually how successful I think most of our customers have been, given in many cases was days or at most a couple weeks to figure out how do I basically prosecute my business with no one in my offices and branches anymore. Mm-hmm. And so we saw this just massive uptick initially around how do we enable remote access, and then what are the security controls that I might need to think more about, invest more into as part of this process, and even and how do I make sure that like my network can handle this? Like there's like that. Let's just say March and April were very busy months, I think, for me and Chris.
I can imagine.
On that. And we've seen this interesting thing where what we saw is clearly things like, kind of VPN capabilities, very high priority, saw a ton of spend there. But I think you also saw customers who had started down the journey for certain services really pivot more there. And probably the two that I'd highlight would be one on what we've done on the, again, kind of coming back to cloud security, things that you could deliver as a service in a matter of, hours or days became really, really valuable in that move. And so we saw a big uptick in things like our umbrella service, and then also kind of looking at how do you protect this is really about how do I protect my users that are going to applications, and also, they're not within my network as much, and yet we're going to be, we want to be enabling that. So what we saw is really things on identity and kind of access. So for example, Duo, you saw a 30% increase, I think, in, a couple weeks in terms of all. And we saw this set of customers that had said, hey, I care about this initially, when everyone was in the office, I cared about it for, a small percentage of my population. Now I need to roll this out across all my users. And so that was a big thing that we saw as well, just recently.
Great. Chris, what are your thoughts there?
Just to add some data points to what Jeff's said, right? So, let me relay an anecdote. So late March, so maybe a couple weeks into this whole big shift, one of the things I was doing was talking to our customers, as one does, right? And I was talking with a major software company, hundreds of thousands of employees, and talking with one of the business unit leaders there. And she relayed to me that she was on the coronavirus task force in this business. And she talked a little bit about what they were focusing on. And it was really instructive and interesting to me, right? This is a gigantic software business, big SaaS company, right? And every morning they were meeting and they were looking at KPIs. And the first KPI, of course, is how many of our employees are infected or impacted by this somehow, and what are we going to do about it, right? And the second KPI right after that for this gigantic software and SaaS company was network performance and saturation, right? And why was that so important to them, right? Why was that top of mind for the CEO? And I think the simple answer there is twofold, right? One is productivity of the team. Can we work, right? Because we're used to having infinite bandwidth with respect to each other, sitting across the table and being able to engage very directly. And now it's all like this, right? It's all over video conferences or video chats and other medium. And securing that is a whole new beast. Making that an effective experience is a whole new beast. And it's all done over the network, right? So that's one side of it. And the other side for this company, they're an application company, right? And their applications are now suddenly being accessed in totally different ways, different workloads, different patterns, because everybody who uses their technology is in the same boat, right? And one of my biggest takeaways from that conversation, and it's played out in meeting after meeting after meeting since then, is everything has changed in terms of how we're accessing our applications or engaging with each other kind of overnight. And it's really shown a spotlight, right, on the network, right? Like foundational network services they're no longer, strategic forward-thinking investments that, are aligned with some transformation strategy over 10 years. They're business continuity level investments. And just backing up a little to the macro trends that we've seen accelerate, right? What we've always seen, I'm holding my phone up, and there's an explosion of devices on these networks. There's an explosion of different ways that we're accessing applications. The applications are moving around. There's dynamicism in our footprints, both inside the enterprise network and in the applications. And there's more distribution, as we've already talked about, in terms of the workloads and how we're accessing. And that all buckets to more complexity, more heterogeneity. And this event just put the pedal to the floor on that trend, right? And that's what's driving it. Exactly that. As Jeff said, right, like what we've seen here is a pivot is a good word, right? Or like a massive acceleration of things that were already happening. There was just no impetus behind them, right? And now there's an immediate impetus, which is we can't work until we drive this change fast.
Right. So, Chris, how would an organization know that they're successful at this? Like, how do they know if what does a good application delivery look like? What are some of the metrics that customers are optimizing for?
Of course, the answer is it depends, right? But let's look at this sort of broadly. If you have applications and they're delivered over the network or the internet, right? Almost all of our customers, which are the applications everybody uses all day, every day, right, are caring about a few things. One of them is user experience, and we've talked about that a little bit already. But basic ways that networked applications are measuring this include response time, right? Like you load a restaurant review on a reviews app, like how long does it take before you see that? Or you go to a streaming media website, how long do you see the buffering icon before it starts playing? Or how often do we switch resolutions or rebuffer, things like that? So that's kind of user experience in a nutshell. Is it smooth? Is it fast? Is it snappy is a good word. And that is a big driver for anybody with an internet application, but also now increasingly behind the firewall or intranet or enterprise applications. All these user experience elements matter a lot too. Another big driver is around what does it cost to deliver? How efficiently can I deliver this application to this now very dynamic and distributed audience? And certainly that's just dollars and cents. Like if you're streaming some big, huge live event and you're using a bunch of different content delivery networks to do that, are you able to prefer the cheapest CDN to meet your performance requirements? That's an important driver. Or am I able to send traffic to lower cost cloud infrastructure when it's performing just as well? But there's other notions of efficiency. There's can I scale my application and its traffic and its users independently of scaling my team that has to operate this thing, right? Or do I have to throw a lot of people at this problem, which is very inefficient? Can I automate? So that's a big driver. And then the final, and this is maybe a good segue for Jeff, is security surrounds everything, right? And as we've talked about, the patterns of securing your traffic, securing your users, securing your applications have changed because of all this dynamicism and the more distributed applications and audiences and devices and everything else. And to meet those first two requirements while doing all that securely requires automation at this point, right? It's too complex for humans to meet all of these sort of constraints all at the same time.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing is one of the ways of modernizing is for cloud delivery. So in the past, I know both Cisco and NS1 have spoken about solving a cloud native problem with a cloud native solution. Jeff, can you talk about your approach to that?
Yeah, I'll start. And I know this is actually a really interesting topic. I think you've seen as part of this change at Cisco, really. Like, you think about kind of like how we historically, look, we were a network infrastructure company. We built boxes, and look, we built the wonderful business and helped make the internet what it is today as part of that process. But when Chris talked about how do you start solving things at scale? How do you deliver things at speed? It's really started to kind of change the equation here, and even like who the buyers are. You've seen like the application owners become like more and more, I think, force critical and be, they hold a lot of the budget often, they're making the decision more and more. And even you can think about things like DevSecOps, they're becoming part of actually, the kind of those components. So all that's kind of happened, or is frankly still happening as part of that. And so, one thing that you'll notice for Cisco is, and actually Chris is doing the same thing, how you look at delivery really becomes critical. And, we've done is really focus on as a service models as like a fundamental key of how to deliver quick time to value. It helps us build better products. It's all the reasons why as a service makes sense. And we're essentially in this world where you're looking at more and more of the functions that used to live on-prem be able to be delivered via an as a service in cloud native way. And we actually learned, it's funny, if you look at the first time we moved a proxy to the cloud, we didn't architect it right. So, it was kind of the old school way. It didn't, Chris talked about the ability to scale horizontally and, how do you do those things? And frankly, we didn't do that. And, as a result, it was really difficult for us to keep that, we had cost issues and scale problems and kind of all those things. And so, luckily, we've had the ability to do that again with what we're doing with our Umbrella and Secure Internet Gateway. And we started at it from a native how do I actually start native microservice from the beginning, get as much state out of the application as possible, scale horizontally, like all those aspects have been really, really critical for what we've done. And I think the last 5 acquisitions we've made have been native cloud, technologies. So we just kind of seen this over time. And then I'll toss over to Chris, but I think it's interesting to look at like a foundational beginning of that was our acquisition of OpenDNS and this kind of leverage we saw that we could get from DNS.
Just to play off of that. So you just used 2 great words there, Jeff, right? Like foundational and DNS, right? And, also the broad trend, and you touched on this with the proxy story that I think is really interesting, is that there's a lot of tech, a lot of protocols, a lot of kinds of technologies that have been around forever, but were designed or built or imagined first in an era that wasn't particularly cloud native, exactly. I guess is the word. And these protocols like DNS, right? DNS is a pervasive protocol of the internet and the network. It is everywhere. Everything speaks it. It's the first touch point for everything, right? And yet it was designed in the 80s, right? When there was what was cloud, right? Cloud was a puffy thing in the sky, and had nothing to do with networking infrastructure. And this is actually what led us to create NS1 once we figured out the pizza wasn't the right option, right? And it was that we had learned, in our particular slice of the world in my last business, building global content delivery networks, that this pervasive DNS lookup, this first touch point for our particular application, had a lot of leverage and it wasn't being used, right? And it's the same story as Umbrella or OpenDNS, right? That DNS lookup, ton of leverage as the first touch point toward the internet for security, right? Should this user be allowed to go to this domain? Is it a known bad malware domain? And it turns out if you just rethink that protocol a little bit around these more cloud native environments or use cases, right, you can start to inject intelligence. And that's what Umbrella is on the access side. And that's what NS1 is on the application side, right? It's all about, let's unlock some leverage in this protocol when people are going to whatever.com and ask ourselves, based on all this data we have, what's happening on the internet right now, or what's happening in the infrastructure of whatever.com, and policy by the operators of whatever.com, can we optimize performance or efficiency or security for that application? So Umbrella and NS1 are sort of 2 sides of the same coin or the same realization, right? One on the access and security side and one on the application optimization side. I think that's why we play so nicely together.
I think this is a great segue to my next question. Jeff, we made an investment in NS1 last October, and the entire company was really excited about this investment. So can you talk about the work that has been done so far, and what do you envision for the future?
Sure. Yeah. So we're super excited. And I think Chris said it perfectly. Like, it's such a complementary position for our technologies and products and what we do. We're really excited, and I'll break it down in a couple kind of key dimensions. So one is, frankly, Cisco has a large, route to market channel capability set. NS1 has a market leading product that has already gotten it's like the kind of who's who of sophisticated application companies. But I think there's an opportunity for us to work together, and we're doing that now of bringing in NS1 into our price lists and helping scale what NS1 is doing. And it's great for us because, let's just say there's some other companies that are less complementary to us and have some of this stuff not as good as NS1's, but is there, and so we're working to bring that. So that's like an easy step that we're moving forward. But what really gets me excited is just seeing some of what's the next step from a technology perspective. And so I was, Chris and team. We have joint customers. One was a very large financial institution, had to get 160,000, I think is what the number was, users. This is a bank where basically you couldn't work from home, and then all of a sudden you had to work from home. And so this massive scale out of remote access in the end of March, and using our VPN. And it turns out that in parallel, NS1 was helping them optimize what VPN head-in their users went to. Mm-hmm. And so it's this great complementary aspect of something where we had kind of a core infrastructure, but then NS1 was able to make that infrastructure work better. Another example is what we're doing. So Thousand Eyes is a recent. Mm-hmm. We haven't closed the acquisition, but we're in process of doing that. And they've actually already had a really strong relationship between the visibility that Thousand Eyes have and sharing that into NS1. So, I guess the way to peel out is there's some really interesting areas to look at the performance and additional security functions that NS1 has, and overlay with what we're doing on both a security and a networking perspective.
Yeah, and I think our customers are going to be super excited about this, especially with the Thousand Eye partnership. Chris, how has your experience been post the partnership? What does it mean to NS1?
So I'll just play off a couple of the themes that Jeff highlighted here, right? So obviously we started together around Umbrella and NS1 because of just the obviousness of it almost, right? We're both playing in this DNS layer. These are teams that know each other really well, technology areas that are really complementary and aligned. And that's gone incredibly well, right? I think one of the fastest, biggest partnership development processes I've ever seen. And as Jeff said, because of Cisco scale and NS1 tech and just the obvious alignment of these two technologies, that's played out really well. We've since found a million other areas, and rather than call all these things out, right? Whether it's Thousand Eyes, which is a really exciting move on Cisco's part from our point of view because of the existing relationship and our ethos around actioning on that kind of data, or whether it's SD-WAN or VPN or any of these other things. I think what drives it all, right, is that, again, these are foundational networking technologies, right? DNS, we play in DDI as well, DNS, DHCP, IP address management, and we sit on both sides of the access networking and application networking sides of the fence, right? The system of accessing these key applications and the system of delivering these things. And I think we share the same hypothesis, right? Which is all of this stuff is converging in the cloud, basically, right? And so our business is about taking these particular technology areas that we play in and driving that convergence as quickly as possible and driving value around that convergence with cloud native tech that is built with that in mind, right? And I think that's just directly aligned across all the business units at Cisco with the hypothesis behind what's happening in infrastructure and in the network and in enterprise, right? So, broadly, I think that's what gets me really excited. Is it's not just that NS1 and Umbrella are integrated and selling together against some joint competitors. It's that the two businesses in their entire theses, right, are so well aligned, and there's just so many different angles for us to explore.
Absolutely, Chris.
Just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Chris, I get to see the firsthand the benefits that our customers get out of this partnership. So we're really excited about it. Moving on, I wanted, Chris, I want to come back to you. We've talked a lot about trends today, from automation to distributed application infrastructure. Let's take it forward, looking view into next 3 to 5 years. What do you see as an emerging trend that our customers should keep an eye on?
I'll give a couple answers to this question, right? So one, and we've touched on this a little bit already, is that I actually think this pandemic that we're in the middle of, is going to impact the way we build and deliver applications and build networks and access applications and the way we work, right, for that time duration, right? 3, 5, 10 years. And we're right at the start of it right now. And so, if there's one macro trend, it's that everything we're seeing right now is gonna keep playing out. And I sometimes fall back to other shock events we've seen in the past, right? In my particular world, a good example is there's a major managed DNS vendor back in 2016 that had a large chunk of the internet sitting on it that had a big DDoS attack against them and took them offline for about a day, right? And so there's two phases to the way enterprises respond in that situation. Right? One is triage, and that's what we're still in the middle of, triage with respect to coronavirus. Everyone's figuring out, how do we work? And as Jeff said earlier, right? Like, surprisingly, that's gone pretty well. But it's still little bit of bubble gum holding it all together. Right?
Yeah,
exactly right. And so, phase 2 is, all right, well, that's important. We better not slip back away from that in case an event like this recurs. And we all expect that, right? With coronavirus, we expect to be in phases here. So now it's going to be, all right, what did we learn from that, and how do we apply those lessons and make them stick, right? And I think, we're gonna see all of that. The only other thing I think I'll highlight is a trend that isn't new, right? But there's just, we're accelerating as a result of these conditions we're in. And that is toward, as we've just talked about, this convergence of access and application networking at the cloud. That's super, super important, right? When you think about just one quick thought on this, right? Across the street from me, very unfortunately, one of my favorite coffee shops has gone out of business, right? And it is a tough time in retail or campus or offices right now, right? But all that stuff is going to come back eventually. In 6 months or 9 months, we're all going to want to go buy coffee again, right? So somebody's going to buy that thing, or the original owner is going to come back and they're going to reinvest. And then the question is, how are we going to lower the barriers to entry for them to do that? And the tech stack for anybody to spin up a business historically has involved a lot of gear, and it needn't anymore, right? Like, all of the technology to deliver these services securely, reliably, fast, cheaply from the cloud exists, right? So we can go faster now, and we're going to see that trend just continue. We've been talking cloud for 10 or 15 years now. As Jeff said, we're still just at the start, and it's just going to go faster.
Jeff, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, Chris has used that word convergence, and sometimes I caution, like, what the analysts are saying, don't read too much into this. But Gartner's, they've coined this term SASE, which is an awful acronym, but it's really this idea around cloud native delivery of security and basically networking capability, and it's all about how do folks securely access applications, and how are we enabled to deliver great experience in that same process and protect the application side as well. And I think it's real. it's coming. There's a bunch of work. It's still very, very early in that whole cycle, but I do see, there's just no reason why. And Chris talked about, the thing about the cloud, it is the velocity, the speed at which you can deliver, it's enabling whole changes to business models, as we've all talked about for years, et cetera, but it's real. And I think it's funny, like the network, but networking and security are really now just kind of, I think, catching up to that. And we saw this kind of initial like SD-WAN motion, and it's still happening, but there's more. And I think the types of things we can do, particularly with the type of intelligence that someone like NS1 has, like it makes like this huge difference of what you can get out of that infrastructure and how easily and quickly you can help the end users in that environment. So,
just to play off of that for a second, I think one more thought I'll throw in here, right? What we're learning right now, and we've learned every time there's some kind of big macro event, right, is that businesses that are elastic are resilient, right? And that's the promise of cloud. On the positive side, right? Elasticity helps you scale efficiently and build a big business fast and all those wonderful things. But in a scenario like the one we find ourselves in right now, the businesses that have been able to be elastic in terms of how their users are working together or how their applications are reacting to different conditions are the ones that are going to thrive. And this is why you see every enterprise today is either investing in cloud and the elasticity they get with it, or they're not going to last, right? It's as simple as that. And so the drivers are existential now toward building these elastic and resilient infrastructures, right? And infrastructure, I think, is an important piece of it. That's where Cisco sits. That's where NS1 sits, right? We are thinking about the foundational infrastructure now, on top of which everything we do is built. Because everything is over the network today, right? And if that infrastructure isn't elastic, it's not resilient, and neither is your business, right? So that's the big trend.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this. I think I'm sure our customers are going to keep an eye on these trends. But this brings us to the end of our panel. So to wrap up, can you both give our audience your one key takeaway and in one sentence?
That's an awful question, Nia.
I don't think either of us know how to talk in one sentence. Well, I'll give it a shot, right? It would be way too easy to say access and application networking are converging in the cloud, right? Because that's what we've just been talking about. But there's one.
Damn it, Chris. I was going to say that.
But how about this one? We've touched on this just a little bit. I do think it's an important takeaway for everybody. There is a lot of leverage in foundational protocols of the network like DNS, and it's just waiting to be unlocked.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah. All right, so my side, I think one thing is like, to me, like time to value and how you think about like the way you're structuring your investments, I think is never been more important. And I think we've to Chris's point, you saw like the companies that could react quickly are the ones that are going to be durable. So just keep that in mind for all the decisions you're making as you continue to like respond to what's going on in the world.
That's a great insight. Time to value. Well, thank you both of you for joining this panel today and sharing your insights. I really, really appreciate it. And I personally got a lot out of this panel, and I hope our audiences at home did as well. For the audiences who've tuned in today, thank you for your time. Really appreciate. And if you would like to know more about us, learn about us, feel free to reach out to us or reach out to NS1 at ns1.com. Until then, stay safe and goodbye.
Thank you, Nita. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Nita.
Thanks, Nita, Jeff, and Chris for that great panel discussion and for finishing, the day strong. So now we've reached the end of Explore 2020. To be honest, I'm a bit sad. I really enjoyed spending the last couple of days with all of you. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's joined. As I said before, this was the first virtual summit that our team has ever put on, which is why your feedback is so important to us. If you can take a minute or two and just fill out the survey, you'll actually enter for a chance to win AirPod Pros also. If you want to learn more about Cisco Investments, you can reach out to myself or anyone else on the team. You can also go to ciscoinvestments.com. So with that, I am signing off. I hope everyone has a great rest of their Wednesday.